I'm Alex, as Georgia mentioned, one of the account executives here at Autogen, and thanks so much for joining this webinar and how our teams are using AI to support their bid process. As Georgia mentioned, we'll be covering how Autogen is used to handle faster responses, reducing the amount of time that is spent in the preparation and responding to bids, and also crucially in terms of the quality and improvements of quality we can make across the process from using AI. I'll start to share my screen. Throughout the call, there will be that Q&A function, which my colleagues will be monitoring, and I'll also leave sort of 5-10 minutes towards the end to go through any questions that have arisen that we haven't addressed so far. So sharing my screen now, you should be able to see the AutogenAI library. So AutogenAI, we create language engines for clients. So this is somewhere where you can safely and securely upload previous bid collateral. So whether this is case studies, previous responses, policies, procedures in a range of different file types. So ranging from like Excel, PDF, Word documents, it's a space to securely query your previous responses. So when handling new questions, we can intuitively draw from semantically relevant information within that bid library to help with first draft generation, collaboration, then that reviewing and redrafting stage of the process towards the back end. So as you can see here, we have an available integration as well with SharePoint. So you can connect up to your SharePoint libraries to then pull across the relevant information that you want to give Autogen context of in terms of helping with generation for drafts. So this library is what I like to describe as the heart of the solution. And then in terms of more of the content generation side of things, one space we would go to would be projects, which is our collaboration piece. So in a similar way to Notion or Google Docs, that space to allow tagging colleagues in comments, inviting colleagues to collaborate and work together real time in a response can be managed through projects. And this is also a space to manage different concurrent opportunities that might be needed to respond to. You can see we have different due dates we can assign to opportunities. We can update the stage these might be in throughout that process. Now, entering a project, we have different questions, different sections of response. I label mine questions 1 through 1.5, and this gives us a space to help with task allocation. And so again, supporting that collaboration side of things, I can assign Gary to be responsible for question 1.1. He'll then get an email notification that he is responsible for answering that question. And I can still also see and have oversight over the content Gary's been creating. So if I enter into a blank document, it's going to be a very similar visual layout to any other text editing tools in terms of that initial workflow. As you can see here on the right-hand side, we have that comment section to foster that collaboration. I can tag Gary or other colleagues that I want to invite into this response, whether it's sections of the text I want to comment on or more of an overarching piece of feedback in terms of what areas might need more detail, more evidence, and so on and so forth. In terms of the content generation side of things, it's a very simple process. We can either drop in the question we've been asked or come in and write a command or a prompt in terms of what we might want to start writing about. So using an initial example, I might come through and say something like, please outline AutogenAI's approach to user training and onboarding. And I can simply, in this context, it's more of a command or what I want the engine to help me write about. I could certainly just drop in the question we've been asked as well. I can highlight that text and use the array of different transformations, which are large language model powered tools to help us in the drafting and redrafting stage of the process. And one of them we would use to get off the blank page and also help adhere to different word count guidelines is expand, in which I can see we have a target word count, which we can define. So if I want a 400 word answer to this question, I can generate content towards that. And you'll also notice we have 3 different sources for content. So the library AI is what we touched on towards the start, that either that integration with SharePoint or just that library that you've uploaded to Autogen. And we can then query that and pull in relevant information from previous responses with links so we can track where content is being generated from. Now, similarly, we allow a secure way to query external sources on the internet, so relevant articles, web pages that we might want to draw information about. This is also useful from a researching perspective if you want to ask questions out to the internet from a more researching perspective, or if there's useful content on your company websites that we might want to draw from. The third area will be creative AI, which will be overarchingly similar to those pre-trained models, like your ChatGPTs of the world, that are certainly useful in creative writing and giving some ideas and suggestions. But there are certainly scenarios where we want to use creative writing and other scenarios where we might want to reference exactly what we've done before in previous delivery or previous case studies in which we might be drawing from the library in that context. And then a simple process for then, as we mentioned towards start, choosing a word count, selecting generate, and then on the right-hand side, we'll provide you a number of different options to choose from. A large part of the Autogen platform is maintaining that human interaction, keeping the human in the loop in that decision-making process. So you'll notice we've had control over the questions we're asking and how you want to prompt it or guide that narrative from the start. And we'll also provide a number of different options for you to choose from on the right-hand side for a first draft. We're avoiding mandating one particular answer you should use. You've got more context outside of the question and what's there and obviously more expertise. So a lot of it is then looking through which of these options I can inspect the different resources it's gone through and read through to help with generating this draft. They might be slightly different word counts. They might be slightly different structures. And I can then choose my best starting point and drop that in. So then we can spend more of the time in the reviewing and redrafting stage of the process, as opposed to doing a lot of the grunt work to get off the blank page. So as you can see here, we now have a 370 word first draft that we can start to tailor and tweak as we might see fit using our own appraisal of this draft. As mentioned a little bit earlier with that comment section, that's then that space that you can highlight sections of the text, leave comments and tag colleagues in terms of, let's say, we might want to add more detail on the onboarding sessions, what's included within them. I can tag colleagues and have some feedback on that, which we can then easily see in the comment section and then action as we might see fit. We'll also provide a way for the AI to help review responses. You will notice next to the comment section, there is a gamma review functionality, which allows us to review our draft against different holistic or predefined criteria in terms of quality of content, how well evidenced is our writing, how sound is our approach and methodology, or how detailed is this, spelling and grammar check, robustness, but also crucially, a space for appraising our drafts against the question that we've been asked and the different requirements that we need to adhere to. So it gives you a space to insert in the question, the relevant requirements or criteria that we want to review against. So then we can get actionable feedback as to whether we might have deviated away from the question, we might not have addressed some of their requirements, or what we could do to better address some of the requirements for the response. So you can insert them in there. And again, the process is very simple of highlighting the desired amount of text that you want to review against, selecting different criteria, and then selecting to review these. And then the engine will come up with a number of suggestions for us to then, again, use our judgment on which of these we think are appropriate to improve upon. They are still suggestions, and it's still your judgment on what you want to do to help improve the quality of that response. And as you can see here, for approach methodology, it asks me to clarify how as required is determined, so more specificity on that response. If I go down to some of the evidencing pieces, we might need to use case studies or different metrics to make our answers more compelling, supporting the points or statements we're making with tangible evidence that we can then use to make sure that the quality response is at the highest possible potential. As you might have noticed when I was highlighting text earlier, we have the comment section there, but we also have a functionality called Ask AI. Now, certainly you can rewrite content as you see fit and edit the text that we generated here, but Ask AI is a really, really easy way to help regenerate text based upon either the feedback that Autogen's given us in this gamma review function, or the feedback we gave each other in this collaboration piece with the comment section. So as you might have seen there, let's take this example. We're talking about the AutogenAI Academy, which is the e-learning platform within the solution. I can use Ask AI to enhance, rewrite, or generate more content based upon the desired text. So a great way for incorporating in feedback or making sure we're addressing different requirements. So I can come here and say, rewrite the above text to provide more detail on the onboarding sessions, or more detail on the AutogenAI Academy, should I say. I can select that. It's going to go through to our library and pull in more detail on that academy based upon the content we have within that library. So seeing how we are shifting more of the workflow to the reviewing and redrafting stage, so more time is spent on the quality as opposed to just getting to the first draft and pulling through from previous responses. So you can see there's a quicker iteration cycle, and we can quickly incorporate in feedback into our responses, whether that is from what Autogen has deemed as what you might want to do to improve the quality of responses, or equally what you might want to do from comments left by your colleagues alongside there. And that's one workflow for getting off the blank page and helping with the redrafting stage of the process. And as mentioned, we have an array of different transformations here to help support different requirements or different tooling you might need to use alongside that. So obviously we mentioned from getting to a particular word count, we can generate towards that. We can also go the opposite and reduce down word count. So in those scenarios when you need to make sure you're adhering or underneath particular thresholds, we can choose a desired word count. So again, I can highlight the text and then choose, maybe we just want a threaded word response here. And we can get different regenerated versions of our content. We're not cutting out whole sections or whole lumps of text. We're ensuring we're maintaining the meaning of the initial core messages that we were trying to articulate, but underneath that threshold of 300 words that we have there. So we can see this one's reduced down to about 87 words to be 274 words there to help support that. Alongside this, there's other functionality which can, again, help us to articulate the different messaging. We have functionality to incorporate in key win themes or key styles from your company. Tone of voice, something that's really, really important, especially with using AI, and especially within bidding. So we will create for all of our clients their own tone of voice. So clients will provide us with extracts of their writing, style guides, even a questionnaire, so we can understand the tonality that they want to be presenting themselves in. So avoiding that AI generic tonality or that Americanized tonality, which we all might be familiar with from seeing LinkedIn posts that have been generated through different AIs. So make sure we still have that compelling active narrative that's reflective of the tonality and the style of your previous responses within there. And obviously that's exacerbated by the fact that we are drawing from your library. So all of that content and context that we've got from previous responses to help with building out those different drafts that we would have there. As we mentioned as well, with the reviewing side of things, how we might get feedback based upon evidence and what we might want to do to better evidence our answers. We spoke about using Ask AI to incorporate in feedback, but from an evidencing perspective, we'll also provide add statistics or add case studies as two tools to help with drawing relevant information from previous responses to make sure that we are adding some quality to our sponsors by evidencing the content we're trying to talk to. So a very simple process again, and with adding statistics, adding case studies, we're only going to use the library and the internet. We're not going to use creative AI because we don't just want to make up a case study to fit the bill. We want to reference exactly what we might have delivered before, whether that's from relevant internet sources or relevant web sources, library sources even. So as I can see here, you can drop in a statement that you want to then support with evidence. And again, it takes a lot of the legwork out of you having that encyclopedic knowledge of your SharePoint or your documents of those relevant case studies to the question. So I can insert in here, let's say AutogenAI, improve the productivity and quality of bid writing. As a statement, I can highlight that, select add case study or add statistics, and it will go through into our library or into the internet to pull from those relevant sources. And then again, as we spoke about towards the start, we will, in a similar way to the first space for getting off the blank page, that expand functionality will be given different options of case studies to choose from. So again, it's still our judgment on which we think might be the most relevant one to include within this response. As you can see here, we've got some case studies, one from a client of ours called Carium, from different transport providers, some independent trials we've had done. And I can read through and you'll notice again, different lengths of case studies been brought in. So I might prefer to use an 84-word response rather than a 260-word response, obviously dependent on the detail you want to go into and the word counts that you're trying to adhere to. Another really useful way of checking, obviously we provide different sources here that we can draw from in terms of knowing where content's been generated from. But if you want to fact check or validate where different content has come from, we have the search functionality here, which allows us to highlight sections of the text to search and then cross-reference that content with previous responses or documentation within our library. So as you can see, this has come from our marketing brochure, and we can see that it's read through this information, this detail provided by the marketing brochure to help with the generation of that response. Now, crucially, what we're doing here isn't a copy and paste of content from previous responses. It is a understanding of the question that's been asked, reading through all semantically relevant documentation in the library, understanding that, and then answering the question in the new context. So this is really important. So we're avoiding that sort of cookie cutter approach and making sure that when we are answering questions, we can make sure they are aligned to requirements and aligned with the narrative that we want to pursue. So again, even from the outset, if I wanted to add more detail to this, please outline our approach to user training and onboarding. I can even from the outset say, when answering the above question, ensure we address the following requirements. So again, a way for us to have that complete control over the narrative, and we're just relying on the AI to help with finding the right content and providing us with a really comprehensive first draft that's in line with requirements. And then more of our emphasis, more of our time is spent in the reviewing, redrafting stage and the judgment calls on where needs more detail and where could be enhanced throughout that response. Conscious to have a look in the Q&A section just to see what might have come through so far. Georgia, I'm not sure if I can see the Q&A section at the moment, so just want to double check.
We haven't had any questions yet in the
Okay.
Q&A section, but if anyone does have them, please feel free to drop in your questions now.
No worries at all.
Just to
I'll wait for a
jump in
couple.
here, I'm not sure if it's a slight tech issue on our side. We've had a
Yeah,
couple of questions in the Q&A section. I've been answering a couple of them. Alex, one that I promised someone called Tony, who's on the call, that we'd show. He's asked, can you provide an example or show how you can incorporate win themes into responses? And I said I'll make sure that Alex shows this before the end of the session. So maybe we can start there.
of course, of course. So as we explored before, we can use the Ask AI functionality to weave in different narratives and win themes into responses. If I go to the My Draft section, you can also outline it within projects, but we have an input section within drafts, which allows you to change different company values, different win themes, or different tender requirements. So within this space, you can use these as different concepts or themes that you want to incorporate into responses. So again, if I go through to My Drafts, similar layout. My Drafts is an individual writing space, whereas projects is that collaborative workspace that we explored just previously. And with the incorporate section, this is where we can choose different relevant company objectives, tender requirements, win themes, or company values that we want to weave in and incorporate into our responses. So if I do another example of getting content up, I can say something like, please outline what's your design approach to security to give it a different context. I'll use the expand to get off that blank page in a similar way. And then once I have the core content of what we want to be answering, incorporating in different win themes to that response is really useful. So I have that response there and drop that in and then highlight the text that we want to incorporate content with. And so maybe from a company value perspective, or a company objective, we might want to talk about implementing best practices of data security and privacy. So that's a theme or a concept we want to ensure we're articulating throughout our responses. So I can select that, and we're going to rewrite that content based upon that different theme, objective, value that we want to be ensuring we are articulating throughout the response. And as you can see, it's rewriting different sections of the text. So it's not just a lumping in of that win theme, it's been thread in throughout, or in this context, the company objective. And as we can see back there in the draft section with the inputs, you have complete control over what themes or concepts you want to then weave throughout your responses. Within projects, you can have project-specific win themes. So drafts is a global like theme or input selection, whereas within projects, you can have different projects which obviously have different win themes and different tender requirements you want to ensure you're articulating. So within the project space, we have an input section as well that we can then insert and start to tweak through. Obviously, we still have that ability then, I go back to this previous document, to use that Ask AI functionality to rewrite and add in more specific details that you might want to outside of the incorporate feature. You want to add more emphasis on certain points or making sure you're articulating certain win themes. That's a great way of doing so as well. Just double checking, Cam, if any other outstanding questions. I know, Tony, we talked about incorporating win themes.
No, that was most of it. There was a couple of questions on capture because I'd spoken about it in the chat. Someone also asked about SharePoint integration, so you can go whatever round if you'd like there.
Yeah, of course. So with the SharePoint integration, it would be a connection made on your side with the SharePoint admin. You would still have complete autonomy over what documents from SharePoint you wish Autogen to have access to. In terms of a security perspective, each client of ours gets their own language engine, so there's no sharing of your documentation with other clients of Autogen. And then with the overarching large language model providers, we have enterprise level agreements that they're not learning from or training from your documentation, previous responses, etc. So with the SharePoint integration, we just go up here, connect SharePoint, and you would choose the relevant files and folders within the SharePoint. And the idea then is the SharePoint will remain that source of truth. Any changes made in your SharePoint that are in the relevant files would be reflected within AutoGen. So again, avoiding that duplication of upload and duplication of knowledge management from that side. The other piece around capture is our a newly released feature around integration with different tender portals. So if I go within here, it gives us a way, this is an example I've done before, about website design. And you can search for different keywords, different regions, different contract values, different deadlines we might be working towards. So we can look through and see which different responses we might want to approach for that bid, no bid perspective. And we can then open the source and go directly to the relevant portal that we have been provided that notice from, and that request for invitation to tender. So it's an integration with a range of different portals. I think it's around 160 different portals. I think I can certainly send through to anyone who is interested from a capture perspective what details there are in terms of where that data is coming from and what integrations there are there. I know, Cam, you've already touched on a couple of bits within capture perspective in the Q&A, but essentially it's that early stage capture, so we can use Autogen to integrate with those portals to capture potential opportunities, and then use Autogen to go through the bid no bid workflow where we can decide from a compliance perspective or contract size or key win themes side of things, if this is an opportunity we want to pursue or not. So that all appears prior to the actual drafting stage of the process, which has been most of the workflow that we followed in today's session. Conscious of time, there's about 3 minutes left. I haven't seen any unanswered questions in the Q&A box. Following this, Georgia will send across the recording of the session. And I believe she'll also send across our contact center, and also feel free to drop me any LinkedIn messages or any questions that might come up with later on. But the contact portal should be a great way to ask for additional detail on different pricings and any unanswered questions that we haven't covered so far in today. This has just been a snapshot into the core workflow of collaboration side of things, how we can use AI to get off the blank page, redraft, review content, and then collaborate to making sure that we are spending more time in that reviewing, redrafting stage of the process to improve the quality, just helping our clients, boosting their win rates by 30%, and from an efficiency point of view, up to an 85 increase in productivity. The ultimate goal in providing proposal teams with more capacity to respond to opportunities, and also a bit bigger likelihood for the opportunities that they do pursue, that they'll have a larger chance of winning due to the quality of content that we can help them generate.